Welcome to another Explainer. Today we are exploring something absolutely fascinating. We're looking at the deep interconnectedness of Japan's breathtaking natural landscapes, those ancient misty forests and serene coastlines, and its rich cultural heritage. If you've ever wondered how a society basically weaves its physical environment right into its DNA, well, you are in the perfect place. Okay, let's dive into this with a question that really sits at the heart of modern history. How does a nation modernize at lightning speed without, losing its soul? Like, how do you transform into this massive global powerhouse while keeping your ancient traditions so incredibly intact? To answer that, we really have to look at how Japan balances tradition with modern life through one singular guiding principle. I was totally blown away to learn about this concept called Japanese cinemalism when I was looking through the source material. Basically, it's a film paradigm where deep human emotions aren't just acted out on screen, they're actually expressed through natural phenomena. In Japan, nature isn't just a pretty background, it's a core character. It's inextricably linked to the human experience. And this idea of nature as a vital, active participant, that leads us perfectly to our roadmap for this explainer. We're taking a macro to micro journey of harmony today. First, cinematic landscapes. Second, washoku, which is culinary harmony. Third, omotenashi and etiquette. Fourth, the modern samurai spirit. And finally, number 5, the Meiji legacy. Alright, section 1, cinematic landscapes, where nature is the main character. The physical landscapes of Japan are so incredibly evocative that they literally anchor world-famous films. And the coolest part, you can actually visit these breathtaking spots. Think of Yakushima Island. Its ancient, moss-carpeted cedar groves actually inspired the mythic forests of Princess Mononoke. Or Tomononora, this historic harbor town with these beautiful, calm inland sea views that served as the real-world muse for Ponyo. And of course, the Arashima Bamboo Grove. Just imagine towering stalks creaking in the wind. It creates a cinematic atmosphere all its own. These aren't just movie sets, guys. They are living, breathing ecosystems that completely define the Japanese aesthetic. Moving right along to section 2, washuku, the culinary harmony. Officially recognized by UNESCO, washoku translates literally to the food of Japan or harmonious food. It combines wa, which means harmony, and shoku, meaning food. So the absolute crucial point here is that wa, harmony, is the thematic thread that stitches the entirety of Japanese culture together. It's not just about what's on your plate, it's about how the meal fundamentally respects the natural world around it. And this brilliantly illustrates that deep respect, the concept of shun, or seasonality. Japanese culinary philosophy actually divides the seasons into 3 microphases. First, you have hashiri, the early season. This is where ingredients are slightly tart and just full of anticipation. Then comes shun, the absolute peak season, where the food is at its most delicious and vibrant. And finally, nigori, the late season, which offers a lingering, almost nostalgic taste. I mean, think about how often we just eat totally out of season, but here there's a deliberate, beautiful respect for eating ingredients at their exact, fleeting peak of harmony with nature. You can actually see this harmony mapped out every single day in the Ichichu Sansai meal structure, which translates to 1 soup, 3 sides. First is your staple, usually some steamed white rice. Then a soup, like a warm miso or dashi stock. Next is the main dish, which is often grilled fish or meat. And then that's followed by vegetable side dishes for nutritional balance, and finally, pickles to act as a palate cleanser. This highly practical format ensures that every single daily meal is balanced, harmonious, and highly attuned to the seasons. Section 3, omotenashi and social etiquette. Zooming in from food to people, it all really starts with omotenashi, which translates to selfless hospitality. It is literally the art of anticipating and meeting a guest's needs before they even have to ask. You see this so vividly in traditional inns called ryokans, where every small course and every single interaction creates a restful, deliberate pace. The whole point is to completely remove friction from human interaction. And this desire to remove friction extends right into everyday, unwritten social rules. For example, avoid talking too much or interrupting others. Always leave room for responses. In Japan, people will rarely, if ever, interrupt you while you're speaking, so returning that respect is absolutely crucial. Also, communication is often quite indirect. You really have to pay attention to subtle cues like body language and eye contact. The Japanese are incredibly skilled at saying no without ever actually uttering the word, so reading the implied meaning is essential if you want to avoid direct confrontation. It's fascinating just how hyper-specific these unwritten rules can get. For instance, don't over-perfume. Yeah, to remain considerate in close quarters, like on crowded trains or inside tiny restaurants, wearing really strong scents is actively frowned upon. It really highlights the extreme level of consideration required to maintain public harmony. Now, this meticulous consideration also applies to the spiritual realm. Just look at the precise process for properly praying at a shrine. Step 1, bow twice. Step 2, make your wish silently. Step 3, clap twice. Step 4, bow again. It's like a perfectly choreographed dance. Harmony is actively achieved through these meticulous, respectful, and shared actions. Which brings us to section 4, the modern samurai spirit. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it looks at the historical DNA of Japan. This excerpt from academic research shows that Bushido, the ancient code of the samurai, wasn't just left in the past. No, it was actively reimagined, and it continues to deeply shape modern Japanese corporate and societal culture today. Basically, the warrior of the past is deeply connected to the office worker of the present. So how exactly did this ancient warrior code evolve into the modern corporate playbook? Well, just look at the parallels. The samurai's deep loyalty to their lord became a deep loyalty to the company. The strict feudal hierarchy, that evolved into a profound respect for hierarchical seniority in modern business. The warriors' focus on preserving their domain directly translates to a modern focus on long-term corporate stability. And crucially, leaders are expected to make sacrifices for the collective good, exactly like how samurai prioritize group honor over personal gain. Section 5, the Meiji Revolution's legacy. We really have to look at the Meiji Revolution to understand how this all survived. Documents from Jacob detailing the revolution reveal something incredible. Unlike the French or Russian revolutions, which, were characterized by massive upheaval and staggering death tolls, the Meiji Revolution was relatively bloodless, with casualties hovering around just 35,000. This lack of complete, widespread destruction meant that while the government rapidly modernized its technology, those underlying cultural traditions were actually allowed to survive and adapt. Let's move to Japan and see how this builds across an absolutely lightning-fast timeline. In 1868, imperial rule was restored. Just 3 years later, a centralized political system was established. Only 8 years later, the entire samurai ruling class was abolished. And just 22 years later, a national parliament was installed. They completely rebuilt the nation's entire political structure in a single generation, all while keeping that core soul of harmony intact. But, maintaining this isn't without its modern struggles. Today, we're seeing a really fascinating tension. On one side, you have those traditional Bushido values: collectivism, loyalty, group honor, and strict hierarchy. But on the other side, modern globalization is pushing forces of individualism, personal autonomy, flexibility, and global norms. Japan is currently navigating this really intense clash between those individualistic global values and its foundational collectivist harmony. Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away from this explainer today. As globalization continues to challenge tradition everywhere, can the rest of the world learn from Japan's delicate balance of harmony? Is wa the antidote to our modern societal friction? It is an incredible question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep exploring the fascinating world around you.
In 1984, an educational psychologist named Benjamin Bloom published a study that defined the central challenge of modern schooling. He identified the 2 sigma problem. Bloom found that students who received one-on-one personal tutoring performed 2 full standard deviations better than students sitting in a standard 30-person classroom. To see the impact of that math, an average student sitting in the middle of the pack shifts to the 98th percentile. They perform better than 98% of their peers simply because the teaching format changed. This leaves us with a difficult question. If we have known the undeniable secret to maximizing human learning for 40 years, why isn't every student in the world taught this way? The reality is that human capability is often suppressed by our logistics. The one-on-one attention required to reach that level of performance is a resource we cannot currently manufacture at the scale of entire nations. We simply cannot afford to assign a dedicated human teacher to every student on Earth. The financial and logistical costs are prohibitive. So society accepted a structural compromise to educate the masses. We rely on the traditional classroom model, which is constrained by geographic location and fixed instructor-to-student ratios. This compromise forces instruction to be paced for the median student in the room, leaving some behind and boring others. Furthermore, when students make mistakes, feedback on a test or essay is often delayed by days or weeks. For centuries, delivering high-quality, personalized education was an economic problem of scarcity. It was limited by how many human experts were available in a specific local area. But the nature of computing is shifting. We are moving toward a new synthetic mind, capable of perceiving, reasoning, and creating, rather than just calculating numbers. Machine language comprehension reached a new stage in 2017 with the Transformer architecture's self-attention mechanism. It allows a model to look at an entire sentence and weigh the contextual importance of every word at once, a mathematical approach to reading comprehension. When combined with generative AI, machines can synthesize novel, custom responses in real time, moving beyond the retrieval of pre-written data from a database. These neural architectures provide the cognitive foundation required for a synthetic brain. We finally have a tool capable of delivering true, one-on-one, personalized instruction. Comparing traditional classrooms against AI models reveals clear operational differences. Instead of fixed pacing for the median student, the AI tutor dynamically adjusts to individual mastery. It replaces delayed grading with instant millisecond feedback and swaps static textbooks for lessons instantly customized to personal interests. This shifts personalized tutoring from an expensive human service into an infinitely replicable software artifact. By removing the need for a one-to-one human ratio, we break the scaling constraints of the 2 sigma paradox. Deploying these life-altering educational systems to hundreds of millions of children is a significant social responsibility. Safe deployment relies on the 4 pillars of responsible AI governance. These frameworks prevent the scaling of societal biases in our training data. Data rights and model auditability are essential, ensuring an AI tutor's logic can be evaluated and regulated by human authorities. This technology transitions education from a localized resource to a globally available one, accessible to millions regardless of their geography. The AI tutor stands as a tool for cognitive amplification. It ensures that a student's progress is defined by their own mastery, rather than the average pace of a classroom.
Am I audible?
Yep, loud and clear. What's on your mind?
So I'll ask questions regarding the Companies Act. Be prepared.
All right. Go on. I'm ready. Drop your doubts one by one.
So a company is capable of owning, enjoying, and disposing of property in its own name. Although the capital and the assets are contributed by the shareholders, the company becomes the owner of its capital and assets. The shareholders are not the private joint owners of the company's property.
Exactly. That's the key principle of separate legal entity. Even though shareholders put in the money, the company itself owns the property, not the shareholders. So if the company owns a building, shareholders can't say my share of that building as if it's theirs personally.
Why they say that it's not a joint owner?
Because joint ownership would mean shareholders personally co-own specific assets, like partners do. In a company, ownership is indirect through shares. Shareholders own shares, not the company's assets directly. If the company sells an asset, the proceeds belong to the company.
So a member does not
directly
even
to the
have
shareholders.
an insurable interest in the property of the company. The leading case on this point is of Macquarie versus Northern Assurance Company Limited, 1925. Could you explain this, the heading and then the case in brief?
Let me check real quick. Okay, yes. The case name is Macora v. Northern Assurance 1925. The principle is that a shareholder, even if he owns almost all the shares, does not personally own the company's assets and therefore has no insurable interest in those assets just by being a shareholder. In Macora's case, he owned timber, which was then transferred to a company in which he was the major shareholder. He insured the timber in his personal name. When the timber was destroyed by fire, the court said he couldn't claim the insurance because the property belongs to the company, not to him. So the takeaway is shareholders don't have a proprietary or insurable interest in specific company assets. Their interest is in the shares.
When they say insurable interest, what do they mean?
Insurable interest means you have a legal and financial relationship to the property such that you would suffer a direct loss if it's damaged. In Macora's case, because the timber belonged to the company, the loss was the company's,
Here they say
not his personal.
does not even have an insurable interest in the property of the company.
Right. That means a shareholder can't take out insurance in their own name for company assets because they don't personally own them. The correct insurable party is the company since it bears the legal loss.
Could you give an example?
Shareholders should insure. Yeah. If ABC owns a factory, even a 99% shareholder can't insure that factory in their personal name. The insurance has to be in the company's name. Otherwise, if there's a fire, the shareholder can't claim personally. They might insure the value of their shares through other financial arrangements, but not the factory itself.
So it means that the properties can be insured only in the name of the company and not the owner, the individual. Is that what insurable interest means?
Yes, exactly. The company, being the owner, has the insurable interest. The shareholder doesn't simply by virtue of owning shares.
So fact of the case, Macora was the holder of nearly all except one shares of a timber company. He was also a major creditor of the company. M insured. Here M is the Macquarie. He insured the company's timber in his own name. The timber was lost on a fire. M claimed insurance compensation, held the insurance company was not liable to him, so as no shareholder has any right to any item of property owned by the company, for he has no legal or equitable interest in them.
Right. That's exactly the point. Even as a near sole shareholder and creditor, he had no legal or equitable interest in specific company assets. His interest was in the shares, not the timber, so the insurer wasn't liable to him.
So hence in this case, since the timber was not insured in the company's name, M could not claim the compensation from the insurance company.
Exactly right. Because the policy was in his personal name and he didn't own the timber, there was no insurable interest. If the company had taken the policy in its own name, the outcome would likely have been different.
perpetual succession. Members may die or change, but the company goes on till it is wound up on the grounds specified by the Act. The shares of the company may change
Exactly.
hands infinitely, but that does not affect the existence of the company. Since a company is an artificial person created by law, law alone can bring an end to its life, its existence not affected by the death or insolvency of its members.
Perfectly put. That's exactly perpetual succession. The company's legal existence continues regardless of changes in membership. Only a legal process like winding up, merges, or strikes off can end it. Death, insolvency, or share transfers of members don't dissolve the entity.
What happens if all the shareholders and all the board of directors of the company dies, let's say in a plane accident?
Give me a moment. The company itself still doesn't cease to exist. Legally, it continues. The shares of the deceased shareholders would pass to their legal heirs or nominees, and new directors can be appointed. So, in that extreme
Hypothetically,
scenario, the company is
if we assume that there is no legal heirs of the dead persons, and let's say all the shareholders and the boards of directors were dead in an accident, so
even
how the company goes on still in that case?
Let me work through this. Legally, the company continues in the sense that it remains on the register until the law brings it to an end. Think of it as an empty shell. No humans left to run it, but the legal person still exists until proper legal steps are taken.